Whenever you're ready.
All right, are we ready?
I think so. We can have latecomers can always join in and catch up. It'll be okay. Here we got one more coming in right now.
Okay, I'll wait. How about now?
I think we're ready. Let me move over to our beautiful pictures.
That is a beautiful picture. Thank you, Kathy. So I'm excited to have Kathy with CyberCompass and Paul with Cato Networks here for our discussion today. CyberCompass works with clients to understand their cybersecurity vulnerabilities and create a risk management plan to mitigate them for best business cyber resilience. Cato has the tools, technology, and solutions to correct the vulnerabilities that CyberCompass uncovers. Together, they can help you build a cyber resilient business ecosystem and infrastructure. Before we begin, I do want to take a few minutes to share my own story with you so you understand why I'm so passionate about your cybersecurity. So I'm in 17 years in IT, but for the first 15 years, I was in IT hardware before I moved into the advisory role and with an emphasis on cybersecurity. I am extremely passionate about the nonprofits that I work with, and I'm working to create digital equality. So I used to own this IT hardware business and was the VP of an international trade association before my own cybersecurity incident. And the two hardest days of my career have been the day that I realized my business was breached and the day I had to tell my clients about it. I didn't have an incident response plan in place. I didn't know where to start. I went to all my friends in the industry and I just had doors closed in my face. Nobody really wanted to have the conversation around cybersecurity, which is why I'm very passionate about doing events like this and making it a comfortable open space for people to explore and talk about their cyber posture. My remote access was not secure. My endpoints were an open door for cyber criminals. And the number one question people asked me was, why would somebody want to hack you? Now, my clients included banks, healthcare providers, and major data centers. So it's my understanding that those hackers in my incident was because they didn't want my information and my money. They wanted to go after my clients. And that was why day number two, the worst day of my career, was the hardest, having to call each of them individually and tell them that I had no response plan, I didn't know what to do, and it was easier to shut my doors than it was to take care of it. Thanks, Kathy.
You're welcome. So CyberCompass, our mission is to not let that happen to anybody else. And we come in and we really help businesses become cyber resilient across their business ecosystem. And we help them navigate the complexity. We understand how complex compliance is, especially when people don't know, what do I have to be compliant in? What do those regulations mean? We joke about it, calling it the alphabet soup of regulations. It is super complex. There's a lot of chaos that that's involved with trying to get your business there, or if something happens and how you respond to it. If you don't get that proactive step taken care of, there's a lot of change. Even when you know what regulations that you have to be under, they're constantly changing. And there's a lot of uncertainty. We help so many clients who come to us and we're like, just do what you know what you're supposed to do because we don't have any idea. And we can do all of that with affordable expertise and tools, because our other thing is that we don't want to break your bank just to secure your company. That shouldn't be the way that it goes. It should be reasonable for every single company to have solid cyber resilience that can protect their business. So one important thing to note, and one reason it's going to be so great to hear from Paul later from Cato Solutions, is that CyberCompass is not the technology solution. We are your virtual cyber team. We bring a compliance officer, a chief information security officer, and a privacy officer to your risk assessment. We help identify your vulnerabilities. We help you create a risk management plan to understand how to correct those vulnerabilities, and decide what order you're going to need to be in. We have everything on our exclusive cyber risk management platform, so it's really easy for you to see what there is, know what your plan is and correcting it, and then when you make a correction, you can actually update it in the platform and it automatically updates your risk. But we do not come in with any of the actual technologies or fixes to solve the open vulnerabilities that you have. So that's where Cato is going to come in as a great partnership to what CyberCompass does for you. So what I want to look at today is basically the problem to the solution. So a big problem right now is that most people only look to protect their data. And the issue is that it's not an IT only problem. You can't get completely cyber resilient if you only look at securing your technology. The technology is important, but we call that the castle wall defense. Like you're just trying to protect your perimeter and you're not taking account of anything else that's in there. So a new cyber world order, and if you pay any attention to buzzwords that are out there with cybersecurity that can go in the frame of zero trust. So the zero trust model, it's basically saying, or we used to say, if you're inside our network, we're just going to assume that you are supposed to be there and accessing appropriate things and not verify. To anybody who accesses it has to be verified. So some of the pain points we see when you're trying to bridge this gap is that there's a lot of confusion and complexity. It's costly, and you really need change across your whole business. So the solution is to create cyber resilience. And so that is data protection that changes your culture to managing your cyber risk. So every type of compliance is ultimately boils down to data protection and how well you're doing that. And there's a lot of factors involved that we're going to be looking at. So every year, there's multiple different companies who put out, these are your risks of 2021, and here's the predictions for 2022. Those are coming out. And so just to kind of look at some of the things that might be affecting you, there's increased attack surfaces. So like what Sarah said, the more that we are interconnected, the larger that attack surface goes. So the more vendors you have in place, the more people you're linked to that you're sharing data with, that increases your chances for that data to be breached, either directly by you or by a third-party person, like what happened to Sarah's client. The hybrid work environment is huge. It's a huge issue right now. People are both working remotely and at home. Many people may not have a company device, and so they're actually accessing private data from personal devices that are used for other things, and that creates a lot of increased vulnerabilities. Reliance on third parties. No company can be an island unto themselves. We have to rely on other people for our business processes to work the best and most efficiently, and that opens us up for attacks. Proof of compliance is a huge thing that we're seeing a lot of our clients coming in needing to have. So what happens is that a vendor, someone like Sarah in her previous business, might have had one of those banks come to her and say, hey, I need you to prove that you're being cyber secure. So fill out this 400 question questionnaire, send me all this documentation. And if you don't do that, we're not going to be a vendor with you anymore. And that is super scary if you have not started that process and don't have it in place. So we're helping a lot of businesses that are having these proof of compliances come in to be able to respond to those in a timely manner with appropriate information. And then the other thing is just compliance regulation requirements. If you are HIPAA, if you are in the financial world and you need New York DFS or NAIC 668, if you just need the general cybersecurity of CIS 20, there's part of our alphabet soup. There's so many out there, and they're all letter acronyms. But if you have to do any of them, we cover them. And we actually can very streamlined cover more than one regulation at a time, which helps save your company time and money in the process of doing your risk assessment. So I'm going to launch our first poll. Your answers, we won't see who answered what, so it can be anonymous, but just out of curiosity, before we really get into what cyber resilience should look like in your organization, I'm just wondering where you think you are. So where's your cyber resilience? Kind of think, if you had a breach today, where would you fall? High risk, low risk, somewhere in between? This is also a good time because I'm going to pause to let people answer. So if you have any questions, I know it's kind of early, then feel free to unmute and ask. We definitely want to keep this interactive and make sure that this is tailoring to what you guys want and need out of this.
Kathy, I have a question.
Yeah.
So, we hear a lot about pen testing. When do we need to do that?
So pen testing is an important part of your technology. Overall vulnerability scans. The issue though is it's becoming one of those buzzwords that everyone's like, I need a pen test. There's different levels of pen testing. There's different versions of pen testing. You can penetration test your outside firewall. You can penetration test your internal network. You can penetration test all of your systems. You can penetration test your web applications to see if people can access your private data through a web application. And then the other thing that we see with people needing pen tests is that they are important, but one and done doesn't really do you any good. It would be like going to a dentist once and never going back and assuming your teeth would stay okay. You have to do them regularly so that you can see, these are my holes that I found out the first time. Now I need to fix them and scan again and see if those fixes are actually working. So penetration is important, and it's part of what we do within our risk assessment for an organization. But it needs to be broader than what most people think of with pen testing, that's an awesome question. So I'm going to leave the poll open. Feel free if you would like to answer later and you haven't answered yet, and then I'm just going to keep moving forward. So like I said, a lot of people have this castle wall defense thinking of their cybersecurity. And they say, okay, we're going to shore up our firewall. We're going to dig a huge moat. We're going to make sure all of our devices are secure. And that's going to be enough. But the problem is that leaves out your people, your processes, and your vendors when you only focus on technology. And so when we talk about building cyber resilience across your business ecosystem, we really want to help you address all of those core elements within your security. So this is just one of my favorite cartoons that we show everybody to hit that point home. So you have your data security in the corner, the firewalls, encryption, and antivirus, and then in the other corner we have Dave. So sorry if your name is Dave, but human error, right? That's actually, depending on whose statistic you look at, it could relate up to 90% of cyber incidents are caused by human error. And so if you completely ignore that element, you're missing a huge part of one of your vulnerabilities. So what this looks like, what we see a lot of people doing versus what our process is, we see a lot of people who look at cybersecurity as being IT only, and they do that castle wall defense, and they're spending a lot of money that is on antivirus and software and probably a lot of the things that are good, but they may not necessarily match what their vulnerabilities are. And the problem is that doesn't address your policies and procedures, your strategic plans of how you handle if you are breached. You can't scale that to an extent. You're kind of stuck within what you purchase. Depending on who you purchase from, you're going to be reactive instead of proactive to prevent things. And you're just missing a lot of stuff. And so what we do with our cyber resilience task is that we cover your people, processes, technology, and vendors. We help you identify your risks across all of those quadrants, and then we apply fixes appropriate to your actual vulnerabilities. And so we help save you time and money because you're not trying to fix something you think is wrong, you're fixing things you know are wrong. And so you're not wasting money on things that you may or may not actually need. So we do this with kind of a 6-step approach, proactive steps to build your cyber resilience. And I'm not going to talk about them all here because I'm going to dive a little deeper into them one by one. So our first step is to identify your risk. This comes with a security risk assessment that includes those technology scans I mentioned, plus a risk assessment that matches whatever compliance standards you need. And there's a big myth that your IT department or your MSP has this covered. But the problem is, since it's not an IT-only problem, those two companies can't do it the right way completely. And so this is, just for time, I'm not going to list every single scan we do. We do a lot of them. They're great. So step 2 is that we need to educate your people and transform your culture. So you should be doing regular cyber awareness training, minimum once a year. More is better. Different types are better. Phishing simulations are great, especially if you get them once a month and you can track Who's messing up? What's making them mess up? How can we help them understand? Policies and procedures, not only do they need to be made, but they need to be communicated appropriately to your workforce so they know the right steps to take. And you need to address your remote workforce. Step 3 is that we document your processes. We help you create your risk management plan by doing that assessment and then identifying your vulnerabilities and putting them in a high risk to low risk order. We help you create strategic plans so that you can plan for business continuity, so that if you have a breach or if another pandemic hits, we actually had a pandemic plan in place prior to this pandemic, not knowing it was coming. If things are going to disrupt your business, you need to be prepared and know how you're going to handle it so that your business can survive. And then the other thing is policies and procedures. Those are usually compliance specific, but they're also very important. So if you have a breach, how are you contacting people? What systems are you going to shut down? If you get hit for ransomware, do you have backups that you can restore from so that you can eliminate the part that is breached? And so lots of things that we help you create those policies and procedures for. And then I don't want you to come away thinking that we don't think that hardening your technology is important. It is important. It just needs to be step 4 instead of step 1 and only. You need to protect the data, the confidentiality, integrity, and availability. You need to ensure access to the data and assets, both physically and virtually. You have those appropriate access controls in place. You have to implement safeguards to ensure that data when it's in motion and when it's at rest. You know, if you have to send something to someone, how is it being protected? And then we help you understand how your technology can help you limit or contain the impact of a cybersecurity event, like having stuff in the cloud, knowing where your backups are, things like that. Step 5 is verify your vendors. You have to know if your vendors are secure, especially if you give them your data, because just like Sarah said, hackers may not be coming after you for your stuff, but they may go after you for your vendors. And for the larger companies, that's the case. They have to make sure their smaller vendors are being looked at, because those smaller vendors may be the gateway to their larger organization, which we've seen recently in quite a few of the breaches that have been heavily publicized. So you need to communicate your requirements to vendors. You need to know what your requirements are for them to be cyber secure, have signed agreements about the appropriate ways they're allowed to use your data, the way they need to secure their data, require proof of their cyber compliance. So that's why we're seeing a lot of these big businesses expecting their smaller businesses to show proof. But you want to know that your people are secure. And then depending on how large you are and the validity of this, you could require that your vendors all have proof of cyber insurance. Although that's getting a little harder to get and maintain, but that's a whole nother conversation that we're not going to get into, but happy to talk about that later. And then step 6, this is the most important. You have to rinse and repeat. Monitor and manage that risk. It does not stop when you get to step 5. Oh, we did it all and we're good. You have to keep monitoring. You have to keep checking. You have to do yearly risk assessments, because things change. Your employees change. Your business goals might change. You might have added an extra location. So much thing. We are fluid businesses, and so our cybersecurity has to be fluid as well to stay up with the changes in our business. And so all of the things in steps 1 through 5, you just need to keep doing them. That's the same thing I said about a pen test. One and done never works. You have to keep going back, just like you do at the dentist, right? You want to keep the health there before you have any cavities. So I'm going to open up our second poll question in the first one, so I can open up the next one. Maybe, hold on. Where's poll number 2 in my? Oh, okay, sorry. You can read the questions before I launch. So of all these things that I just talked about and all these steps, my question is, and you can check all that apply, it's not just I'm only doing one. What do you have in place right now, or you're actively working on to set up in your systems right now. So these are all things that I mentioned. So I'm just curious, read through them and check off what you have going on or you have in the process of setting up.
And Kathy, while they're answering this, I do want to mention, I did have cyber insurance, but I didn't have enough coverage, meaning I didn't have a third party such as CyberCompass or having somebody like Cato doing that third party monitoring. Therefore, my claim could not be passed. And I do have a checklist that was sent to me by a client recently that gives you all of what you need to be able to attain that cyber insurance. And it's pretty extensive. I can imagine it goes very much in line with the compliance standards.
Well, and the big thing that has switched is that when cyber insurance first became a thing, everybody offered it, right? To an insurance company at first, it was like car insurance. Everybody needs it. We're going to give it to everybody. And then they start realizing that they were paying out way more than they were getting in. And so it has very definitively been cut off. So a lot of times to even get insurance, you have to have the third-party verification of your risk management plan and to show the steps you're taking to create that secure business. And then if you're not following that or you don't have one and you're breached, they may or may not actually give you a payout. So it is not as guaranteed as car insurance. It's definitely harder to get. And another thing that's happening too, I recently read, is that a lot of the cyber insurance companies are decreasing your coverage and increasing the rate. So what you might have gotten for $500,000 in coverage, you might now only get $250,000 in coverage, and that might be twice as expensive as your other coverage before. So it's definitely changing.
Yeah, it's no more of like an umbrella safeguard and, oh, I have cyber insurance, I'm fine.
Yeah. Absolutely. All right. Well, I'm going to leave this poll up and you guys can keep reading through it and checking stuff off, but that is what I have for now. So I'm going to hand it over to Paul.
Great. Thanks, Kathy. Hi, everyone. Good to talk to you today. I'm Paul Van Larup. I'm the channel sales engineer for Cato Networks. We are a converged networking and security company. We're based out of Tel Aviv, Israel, with a long history of the security space. Our founder, Shlomo Kramer, co-founded Checkpoint Firewalls way back in the day. He's been known as the godfather of cybersecurity. But what I want to talk to you today about is, how we can address those aspects of things. And thank you, Kathy, as we heard from CyberCompass regarding, identifying those risks and the compliance needs. And then now how can you start securing and protecting those things like your cloud, your physical offices, your data centers, and those remote users, right? And how can you do that quickly and easily? So we'll talk about that today. Just as a highlight, would you believe me if I told you that we could protect any user regardless of how they connect to the edge of the internet, right? Or would you think I was insane that if I told you that it was easy and straightforward with one solution, right? There's a lot of solutions out in the environment, in the technology world today, and Cato's focus overall is a convergence of networking and security together in one simple and easy to use system overall, right? So as we talk to partners and customers and IT leaders in the space, these are the themes that we keep hearing over and over, that they've got existing networks that leverage maybe MPLS, expensive circuits that they provide, or they're worried about their security, as we've talked about today, and they don't know how to cohesively manage all of that with all their individual boxes, different models out there. How do I deal with that if I have to do it on a global scale? That remote access, working from home use cases, not only are the workers complaining, but what are those workers doing and how are we securing them, right? That's a big use case overall. With the COVID pandemic rolling out, our remote access solution set was a hockey stick of growth because suddenly all of those workers are working from home, and how do you scale that and do it quickly and easily, right? And how do I deal with the fact that I don't have servers or on-site resources anymore? Those are moving to the cloud. And how do those get covered by a security model? And finally, how do I actually manage that? I don't really know what's going on overall, and how do I get one type of view into that? Right? So Gartner is a firm that exists in technology that basically highlights the different technologies and provides a view into the way that technology is headed. And their view of things is that, you know, we spent a long time as network and security companies focusing on new features, bringing performance higher and higher, all sorts of innovation in that space. But really that innovation is going to come into the fact that this needs to be simple and easy to operate. It needs to be automated. It's got to be reliable, and it's got to be flexible to business models of, you know, the smallest of the largest customers, right? And that's squarely where Cato lives in this space. So no, that's great, Kathy. Thanks. So from a polling question standpoint, again, I think Kathy will launch this poll here. And, you know, let's just look at the remote worker and office space, you know, and your feelings on how they are secured today, right? Do you feel like that you've got a comprehensive strategy there, or is this a growth area or anywhere in between? So I'll give you a second to respond to that. And again, as I go forward, if there's any questions, anything that I can elaborate on, please interrupt me at any time.
Paul, if you are 100% locked down with firewalls, VPNs, and endpoint protection, is that full safety, or do you feel that there should be more to that?
Well, I mean, if I would be surprised if anyone would say they were 100% locked down in any space, right? But fundamentally, if that were true, right, then yes, I wouldn't need another solution overall, right? I've got my stuff lined up. But if we're honest, right, there's so many companies that come along every day that you would think would be in that 100% lockdown aspect of things, but suddenly they're breached, right? So there is, if you were, I would just say this, yeah, maybe controversial, probably not, but if you were connected in some form to the public internet, then this is something you should be concerned about, and no one is going to be 100% locked down, right?
Yes, we say all the time, it's not if you're breached, it's when.
It's when, yeah, exactly. I mean, and I think as you said it, Kathy, that, you know, you may hear the term supply chain attack out there. It's the fact that we don't do business in a vacuum, right? We have vendors that we do business with, and maybe they're not in that space, right? And as Kathy highlighted, as part of your compliance, looking at those vendors that you do business with is just as important as, you know, your own case, right? The weak link in the chain, right? I think we could probably move forward, Kathy. Yeah, thank you. So, you know, just looking at the overall environment, the networking and security space is very complicated, right? There are point solutions that exist all over the place, from SD-WAN, right? If you're bringing in the aspects of, you can start building this out, Kathy, as we go. The SD-WAN components, right? Which is linking in securely my cloud, my offices, right? Via a network solution. As I, you know, look forward to bring in cloud acceleration and security in the cloud for access there. As I look at branch security and the global backbone for distributed locations. Then I look at my mobile VPNs for secure mobile access to my business applications. These are new requirements, new products to support that, and it's complicated, right? So Cato keeps it simple overall. So how do we do that? So first we start at the branches and users, and we connect you to the Cato cloud environment. And that's however you may connect in, whether that is a physical site like your headquarters or branch, whether that's a cloud service like Azure, AWS, or others, whether that's your mobile users, and then all of those SaaS applications that come in the line as well, right? And then we secure all of that. We protect all of that traffic with our built-in security as a service. And again, that is regardless of how that connectivity is coming in. And then finally, we're managing that in a flexible way, right? We're giving you flexible management options there. So whether that is you managing all of that network and security policy, or if you want to have it co-managed via your partner, or if you want Cato to fully manage that for you, we can support any type of a model in that space and give you the flexibility to do that at any given time. It's simple. So as we do that, we provide this service globally through our private collection of POP locations or points of presence. So these instances live across the globe. And so we'll talk a little bit more about the solution overall, but what we do is those POP locations are typically within 20 milliseconds of our end users. So wherever you happen to be in the world, you're going to get a good performance solution because the heavy lifting for all of our security and network services happens at those points of presence. Okay. So we do that by, again, looking at the fact that we've converged networking and security together. And you see this term up above here, SASE, right? This is, I get another FLA to bring in there. This is a secure access service edge. And what it means fundamentally is the convergence of networking and security that I've been talking about, and doing it in a simple and easy way, right? So our points of presence, as you see on the slide, represented by these little POP locations, are connected via our global private backbone. And that's important because it allows us to connect in there and provide services, you know, from your branch to your data center and wherever you happen to be. Maybe on the left, I've got my branch connects in Seattle, and maybe in the middle, my data center connects in Phoenix, right? And so I'm going to connect to my nearest POP location, and then my traffic will run over the Cato backbone that links those together and access over the common internet to that branch location. Now, over the top of all of that, we secure that, and it's encrypted and tunneled. But that lets you do all sorts of interesting things from a connectivity standpoint. You know, and if you look at a global model, your performance and access to environments outside of maybe just a regional level becomes a much better solution overall, because that traffic is optimized again over our network. So if I am accessing my Salesforce application, in my case, because we're a Tel Aviv-based company that lives out of Israel, I'll run over the Cato backbone and exit in our Frankfurt POP location. So now I'm optimized to that. Yeah, thanks, Kathy. And I think there's one more build out, or two more build outs in that space, and I'll just talk to this for a second. Thank you. From the security side, we have full next-gen firewall capability, so that connectivity between branch offices, between remote users is secured. My internet-bound traffic runs through our secure web gateway. That traffic is secured as well, and we have the ability to filter out things like ransomware and malware and poker sites, or whatever you want to do from a URL filtering standpoint. And then we have advanced threat prevention capabilities that comes on top of there. So we can do things like have our intrusion prevention system will actively look at your traffic, regardless of where it's coming from or where it's headed, and say that, you know, I've got a problem with a log4j exploit that's come out and been in the news as of late. Our customers were actively protected within 10 hours of that exploit being released in the wild. Right, so that's ongoing and something that's provided as a service and just happens natively and easily for you. And then finally, you know, those services can connect in from a branch location, whether I want to deploy a device to connect me in at my branch, or whether I want to connect in my remote user and they can leverage a client to do that. We'll support you in however that looks for your user base and whatever makes sense in that space overall. Any questions on that? Okay. So let's take a use case here where I want to bring in some work from home users immediately, right? This is, again, as I highlighted earlier, this is a use case that was extremely common where within a week we had customers that were like, look, all of my workforce is going to be remote. How can I do that quickly and easily with a Cato solution? So the first step in that is that you need to connect your on-premise data center or location, and you can do that with a simple IPsec tunnel right to Cato, or you could deploy a socket device, which is our hardware device, to connect into that environment. And then from there, you'll connect in if you've got cloud services as well that you want to bring into that fold and provide secure connectivity to, you turn those up. And then third, I can now provide access for those remote users. Let's take a use case where I use Azure Active Directory for those users. I provision them in there. They're automatically built into the Cato system. They get an invite from our solution overall to install the client, and they're activated. And now I fundamentally brought these users online, right, in a day, effectively protecting them, providing scalable access, and that happens wherever they happen to be in the world. And I like to use a solution or a not so theoretical one where you had a company who had a key software developer who decided he was going to head to Vietnam, ride a moped around and connect into coffee shops and continue his work. And they were highly concerned about his secure access into the environment. Well, he just naturally connects into the Ho Chi Minh City POP location from Cato, and now has access to all of these same resources and all of these same security functionalities provided. And he's got optimized access right there in country. And so his performance doesn't suffer. And in fact, his performance to those resources that live, say back in the States, there were much more optimized in that solution overall. Okay.
Paul, I have a question. Does that work for users that are connecting via LTE?
It does, absolutely. So if we have if we look at a solution where I've got a branch office and maybe it's just LTE, or maybe they have LTE as a backup, right? That's a pretty common use case we have. We support all aspects of that link in there. So we can support up to 3 links, whether they are LTE, whether they're direct internet access, a more expensive enterprise level internet access, broadband, you name it. And we can very easily configure a different failover set that says, if my normal traffic, I'm going to leverage this cheaper broadband circuit, but in the worst case failover, last resort, I'm going to use that LTE service so that my remote office can connect in. Or even if I'm doing that from a primary use case, we can support all aspects of that.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm. So that's effectively it for me on this side. Again, any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
I think so. We have about 20 minutes left, and we wanted to leave plenty of time open so that if you guys had questions about compliance or the actual solution that Paul just shared, we are here to help and help you understand what's going on for your business.
Kathy, I think a good question for you would be, do you work with the smaller entities? So I think that, with what you do with CyberCompass, a lot of people might think, oh, compliance, I have to be big business, I have to be big pharma, whatever that is. Can you talk a little bit on that and some of the clients that you work with?
Yeah, so we work with a huge range of both sizes and compliance types. So You know, the big thing now is that a lot of things overlap. Like we have nonprofit clients, but they're nonprofit in the healthcare, or they're nonprofit in manufacturing, or they're nonprofit wherever. And so we have different standards of what we can do to help people. So we have some, like a smaller package that is a little, it's easier cost for a really small company to have, but they have to do a little bit more work on their own. But you know, compliance is compliance, and we're able to bring an affordable solution across any size of business because of the fact that our platform that we use, which is we're not selling our platform or our software to anybody, but it's what we use to run your compliance. And so if you know, need to be HIPAA compliant for healthcare, and you have European Union clients, and you need GDPR, and you're in California, and you need CCPA for that Privacy Act, we can actually combine all those into a single risk assessment, and you're only taking one assessment across your whole organization. And so that makes it simplified for us to help you and help any size business. So yeah, we work with a range. We do have enterprise options for an incredibly large business, but we work down to you know, small doctor's offices that maybe have, you know, 50 beds or something. So we work across a really large range.
Thank you for answering that. I think we spoke on that once, and you wrapped my head around it, where there could be, you know, a small office with 1 or 2 people that have a great deal of compliance to deal with. And on the other hand, you know, I know there's somebody on here that works in a larger office, and they went fully remote. And so now everything that they do in the technology world is 100% remote. And so I'm personally concerned for them because I know, you know, I've been there, as we've talked about, and I'm curious as to what that, you know, what does that chain of command look like, and does it really fall down on that person, and what can we do to mitigate that in terms of, like you said, doing cyber awareness training, and just making sure that you're not the one that clicks that link.
Right. And we actually, you know, to pair with all of the solutions that Paul said, we actually created our own remote workforce survey. So again, it's not to fix, it's to help you understand your vulnerabilities. And so it's something that your IT department could send out monthly or quarterly, you know, to see how well your people are doing. And it, you know, does an internet speed test. It has cyber hygiene questions, things that people don't think about, like, you know, do your family members have access to your company computer, and can they, you know, use stuff? If you do personal and business on the same computer, do you have 2 different accounts, or not accounts, but profiles on the same device, so that you can have one for work, and stuff that like seems like it should be, people should understand, but they just don't know to think about it that way. And so the survey in and of itself helps your remote workforce know some of the things that they should be doing, but also gives your IT department the knowledge that they need to know how to better secure that workforce, which is where the solutions like what Paul was saying come into place. And we actually, when remote work hit so heavily, we actually created some specific cyber awareness training for just your remote workforce, so that they know more of those cyber hygiene things that affect them at home versus people in the office. All right, Julia, I see your hand raised. I don't know how to. You can unmute yourself and ask, or send something in the chat.
Hi.
Hi.
See myself. I am not working for a company right now. I'm actually finishing up my bachelor's in healthcare compliance, which is kind of cool. ASU partnered with the HCCA. So I just wanted to step in and say hi. I actually met Sarah yesterday, and we got to talking, and she told me to hop on here. So I kind of think of compliance more in terms of following government regulations, because that's the majority of what I've learned. So it's been cool to see how much of it is security based. So I just wanted to say thanks, guys.
Thank you. Yeah, we hear compliance people think compliance is a dirty word and that it's just this regulation that I have to check all these boxes and it's super annoying. You know, you feel like you're in school and you just have to take a test. But really, the bottom line is about protecting data. I mean, all compliance regulations, you know, the intent is to protect the data, whether that's forcefully because you think you just have to comply or because you really need the guidance to know the best way to do it. So,
you know, I have a question on that. So are we still seeing the compliance and the IT staff separated in these companies, or are you seeing now that, I mean, they have to work together on this platform, but from my understanding of back in the day, those were two completely separate departments. Can you either of you speak on that, how they're working together now or should be?
I have an answer, but Paul, I've been talking, so you feel free to take that one first.
I mean, I think this is probably more in your space, Kathy, but as I've seen, just we're working with our customers, compliance is no longer that team handles it over there and they're isolated, right? It is a key part of everything that they do, everything that they're interested in. And you know, if I'm honest, the bulk of my technical questions, I literally have 4 that I responded to this morning. It was, how do I map this to PCI compliance, right? And be sure that if I accept, you know, payment for things, how am I securing that? How does Cato do that? Is Cato certified or compliant, right? Hoping that I say yes, and then they can just check that off, right? Which does not cover it, right? And Kathy, I'm sure you can. That's why a CyberCompass is so valuable, because it is not just one person saying I'm compliant and then hence you are, right? It's a holistic view of that.
Yeah, I think we're even seeing this split now. It's more that like IT takes care of cybersecurity and somebody else does compliance, but the people who have really delved into compliance are the ones that are realizing this is everybody. Everybody has to be invested in this. It's the companies that we're coming into that haven't recognized that compliance and cybersecurity are the same thing that are still trying to separate that out. And if anything, compliance gives a boost to the IT department. And then if they're in an environment where it's always been, well, IT takes care of that, or you know, they're doing our security, so nobody else worries about it. The compliance helps support them for people to realize, no, it's not just us. Everyone has to be involved.
Right, exactly. And I feel in my feeling, the entire C-suite should be involved, but everybody down the line, right down to whatever the last job is in the line that you think of should be involved. Everybody, including, as we talked about with the cyber awareness, every single person in that company and in that culture has to understand the severity of what's happening out there. And like we said, it's not if, it's when.
Yeah. There's actually quite a few of the more recent compliances that we've seen come out, like CMMC for anybody that wants to work with Department of Defense. They're actually writing into their compliance regulations that you have to keep your board of directors and your C-suite involved in your risk management plan, and it's actually like a written compliance that you have to do this. So, you know, they're recognizing, the people creating the regulations are recognizing how important it is to be from the top down.
Does anybody else have any questions or comments? If not, I think we're good to wrap this up early.
Yeah. 10 extra minutes for lunch.
Fantastic. Well, I just want to thank everybody for coming on today, and those of you who might be viewing this in the future. I very much appreciate this. I know that I sound a little bit like Chicken Little, although I read on that and I thought maybe that's a bad reference, but the sky is falling, and it's just, you know, we're here. We can be your umbrella, we can be your bridge, whatever it is that you want to say that you're covered. We're here, and you can contact me. My information's on the slide. You can find me on LinkedIn, and reach out. We're here to have this conversation and make it easy.
Thanks so much, Sarah.
Yeah, thanks everyone.
Bye.
Bye.